who are interested in the topic of interest today. I welcome you to this press briefing by the National Human Rights Commission on the recent events that have been happening in the aviation industry. The Commission expresses grave concern over the viral videos and reports detailing the alleged inhuman and degrading treatment of a female passenger, Mrs. Comfort Emmason, in an incident involving IBOM air flight and subsequent actions by airport personnel. The National Human Rights Commission, in its apex capacity as Nigeria's human rights institution, condemns any violation of the dignity of a person and asserts that such actions have no place in a civilized society. The prohibition of torture, inhuman and degrading treatment is an absolute and non-derogable right, meaning that it cannot be suspended or limited under any circumstances. This fundamental principle is enshrined in both the national, regional, and international instruments. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Convention Against Torture, and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights all unequivocally prohibit torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. The National Human Rights Commission also hosts Nigeria's National Preventive Mechanism, which is established under the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture. Similarly, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended in Section 34, guarantees the right to human dignity, and it provides that every individual is entitled to respect for the dignity of his person, and accordingly, no person shall be subject to torture or to inhuman or degrading treatment. The Anti-Torture Act 2017 prohibits the following acts and designates them as torture, namely physical torture, systemic beatings, head bangings, punching, kicking, striking, mental or psychological torture, threatening a person with bodily harm, inflicting shame by stripping a person naked, parading him in a public place, causing unscheduled transfer of a person from one place to another, confinement in jails and prisons, amongst others. The National Human Rights Commission emphasizes that the protection against torture, inhuman and degrading treatment extends fully to all persons, including even criminal suspects. An individual's right to dignity and humane treatment remains intact, regardless of the suspicion of any crime, whatever them called, notwithstanding the venue or nature and magnitude of the alleged offense they may have allegedly committed before law enforcement agencies. Based on the publicly circulated video via social media, the National Human Rights Commission notes with serious concern several actions that appear to constitute violations of Ms. Comfort Emmason's rights, which include the use of disproportionate physical force to restrain and or remove the passenger from the aircraft in an inhumane and degrading manner, and the stripping and exposure of the passenger's intimate and private body parts, in our opinion, constitute a severe violation of her dignity and privacy. The subsequent recording and widespread dissemination of these compromising videos on social media platforms constitutes a secondary form of harm and further degrading treatment. These actions are clear affront to human dignity and are not justified by any initial conduct of the passenger. Under the Constitution and relevant international instruments, there can be no justification for torture under any circumstances, especially by the law enforcement agencies. The National Human Rights Commission wishes to state that accountability for these violations is paramount under the laws of Nigeria, including Chapter 4 of the Nigerian Constitution and the Anti-Torture Act. While this statement does not seek to accuse any specific individual or institution, it buttresses the need for all actors to be held responsible for their actions, including the original alleged malfeasance of the passenger. We note the recent decisions of the government and aviation authorities in taking decisive action and issuing amnesty on the alleged offenses involving the IBOM air incident and the recent one involving ValueJet Airline and Mr. Wasiu Ayinde Marshall. It is our respected view that all the human rights issues arising from both cases should be thoroughly addressed in the interest of rule of law and justice. These include the aforementioned infractions of the right to dignity of the human person and privacy, and right to life and safety of self and other passengers. These incidents also highlight the critical need for corporate bodies to uphold human rights. The UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, as well as the National Action Plan for the Promotion of and Protection of Human Rights in Nigeria, outline a corporate responsibility to respect human rights. This means that private companies like IBOM Air or ValueJet Airline are obligated to ensure their operations, their staff, security and personnel acting on their behest do not cause or contribute to human rights abuses alone or in collaboration with other entities. This includes having proper protocols and training to handle difficult situations without resorting to inhuman and degrading treatment, whether on passengers or airline crew. De-escalation training for the airport personnel could have produced different results in both incidents. The National Human Rights Commission demands a swift and decisive response from all relevant agencies to address these human rights violations arising from these incidents in line with Nigeria's human rights obligation to prevent reoccurrence. In addition, the National Human Rights Commission is calling on the aviation authorities and Ministry of Aviation to immediately review and revise all protocols for managing unruly passengers to ensure full compliance with human rights standards, including the right to life and safety of self or other passengers or crew members, their dignity, fair hearing, freedom of movement, and freedom from torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, and all the other rights. The aviation authorities should further mandate a comprehensive human rights and de-escalation training for all airline and airport staff and enforce strict sanctions against any airline or security agency found to have violated human rights in this instance or in the course of their duties. There is also urgent need to educate and sensitize the citizens on necessary protocols and conduct during flight operations. The Commission also calls on the relevant prosecutorial and investigative authorities to ensure the swift prosecution of any individuals implicated in the alleged human rights violations for criminal responsibility under the Anti-Torture Act 2017. The Commission further pledges its support to victims on all sides in line with its mandate under Sections 5 and 6 of the NHRC Act 2010 and Section 5 of the Anti-Torture Act 2017. Furthermore, in line with Section 5 LMO and O of the NHRC Act, we have taken unprecedented steps today to issue an advisory to all authorities and persons exercising powers over the aviation industry on the right to dignity and protection against torture, inhuman and degrading treatment in aviation operations in Nigeria. This advisory has become necessary to protect passengers, airline staff, and the general public from human rights violations in operations of the industry. The NHRC will continue to monitor the situation closely to ensure that the rights of Ms. Comfort, Emmason, other passengers, airline staff, and crew members are protected, and that all those responsible are held accountable. This is not only in line with our natural mandate as National Human Rights Commission, but also as the National Preventive Mechanism and the Secretariat of the National Working Group on Business and Human Rights. We remain committed to our mandate of protecting and promoting the human rights of all Nigerians as well as all businesses in Nigeria. I want to thank you for listening and for coming.
Thank you, the Executive Secretary, for your very clear and thought-provoking address. Now to our media partners, the media.
The first point I made was the non-derogability of using torture under any circumstance, not relating to the suspension. My point is very clear that amongst all human rights violations, the right to not to be tortured is a right you can never justify. There's no reason in this world the instrument, both national and international instruments, says there can never be any justification for you to use torture. No matter what anybody, even if somebody is an armed robber, even if somebody is a kidnapper, even if somebody has done the worst thing, let's say he has committed treason, it can never be a justification for torture. So it's different from the ban. The ban issue relates to the proportionality. An action and reaction. And you can see that it has been condemned, especially when you look at similar incidents that also occurred in both recent times and in the past. Okay? The proportionality was, you can judge it yourself. You measure an action somebody has taken and the punishment that was handed. It wasn't proportionate. And that has elicited worldwide condemnation of the action that was taken. On the second issue of the significance of the advisory today, we exercise our powers of advisory to bring to consciousness of stakeholders what everybody should be doing in a situation like this. You can see that the aviation industry, people just have been doing what they like over some time. But the recent events is a wake-up call that, hi, we can't allow this to go on. We need to now draw a line and tell everybody, read the Riot Act and say, you have to carry on this business in this way. It's a wake-up call for all stakeholders, both the citizens themselves, the airline industry itself, their crew, their officials. Everybody has a role, even the prosecuting agencies. In the advisory which we have issued now, you see the role there for the MDAs, for the airlines themselves, for the Ministry of Justice, for the police, and so on and so forth. Everybody, even for the media who have a role to play. You can see if the media did not bring this to the limelight, probably people wouldn't know what is happening. But however, we have used social media also to now seriously affect the rights of the people who are involved. So all of us have a role to play. So the advisory is a wake-up call for us to organize the way things are done in this industry in a way that human rights will be at the center of it. And we keep on emphasizing this. If we mainstream human rights into every aspect of what we do in this country, there will be a reduction in all these kind of violations. So it is very, very important that this advisory is adhered to. It's a wake-up call for what the citizens have to do. It's a wake-up call for what the airlines have to do. It's a wake-up call for what the law enforcement agencies have to do. It's a wake-up call for what the regulators have to do. And if we all adhere to this, which objective is to put human rights at the heart of all our activities, you will see an improvement in the way the rights of passengers and the airline personnel and the airline operators and the airline businesses are carried out in the country. And that you can agree with me, that's where we want to head to. That's the Nigeria we want to have. Thank you very much.
Any other organization?
O, amongst many other paragraphs, including L and M, but O specifically said that the National Human Rights Commission may, on its own initiative, or when requested by the federal, state, or local government, report on actions that should be taken by the federal, state, or local government to comply with the provisions of any relevant international human rights instrument. Now, paragraph L states that the National Human Rights Commission shall prepare and publish in such manner as the Commission considers appropriate guidelines for the avoidance of acts or practices with respect to the functions and powers of the commissions under this Act. So a combination or combined reading of all of this is what has made the Commission to periodically issue advisories. Today, it is the turn of the aviation industry. Previously, we've issued advisory to electoral management bodies, to the media on hate speech, for instance. The recent one was law enforcement on freedom of expression and the interpretation of the Cyber Security Act. And then we also had a standard minimum guideline during the COVID-19 on the rights of COVID-19 patients. Now, on the advisory in question, all our advisories are well-researched materials that will enable the media, the practitioners, and other governmental institutions that it is specifically addressed to understand the normative and legal principles underpinning every human right that the Commission has a mandate to defend. In today's guideline, in today's advisory that you have, it is titled The Right to Dignity and Protection Against Torture, Inhuman and Degrading Treatment in Aviation Operations in Nigeria. The advisory is addressed specifically to the Federal Ministry of Aviation, Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, the Federal Ministry of Justice, Nigerian Police Force, Nigerian Correctional Service, and social media platforms. And every advisory of the Human Rights Commission starts with a preamble. A preamble is a symbolic recitation of the spirit behind the provisions of the particular document. And in it, the Commission re-emphasized its mandate as well as human rights provisions and principles that it discussed in the advisory. Every advisory of the Commission is founded on principle, and the principles you see on page 2 are principles that we bring to our work every day. I would call upon you to note principle number 6, where we invoked our neutrality and independence under section 6, subsection 3 of the NHRC Act, which says that the NHRC is not answerable to anybody, person, or authority in the Federal Republic of Nigeria as an independent national human rights institution. Every advisory has an application. To whom is it applicable to? And we have all persons and authority exercising powers related to airline operations, aviation security, law enforcement, public safety, including, and we became specific, Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, airline operators, airline security personnel, and law enforcement agencies operating within aviation environment. Judicial and prosecutorial institutions, corporate entities like airlines and airline owners, social media platform. In the case under review, we saw how social media platforms allowed the video depicting a naked woman to be spread on their platform. That goes against the community guidelines of all the known platforms that we all use in our daily lives. And the Commission will not stop at addressing the press. We are also going to write to each of these social media platforms outlining how they breached their operational guidelines as it relates to human rights. We are not their regulators. We are a human rights institution. And with our human rights czar, who is the executive secretary of the Commission, we are going to engage these social media platforms. The next is the most important aspect of the advisory, or rather the second most important aspect, because the most important aspect of the advisory is the recommendation. But the second most important aspect is the legal and normative principles. So this is where we educate these people we address this advisory to. We are not just telling them, do this, do that. No, why must they do it? So we analyzed national and international legal documents relating to freedom from torture. It is important that I re-emphasize what the Executive Secretary has said. Torture is a no-go area. You don't even torture a Boko Haram suspect. Torture, freedom from torture, is a principle of customary international law, which means that it is now a norm. Use cogens. You don't transfer somebody from a place of safety to where the person will be tortured. The principle against non-refoulement. You cannot also, by your laws or by actions, or your thinking of what somebody has done, the gravity of what that person has done, decide to torture the person in whatever form. And our Anti-Torture Act has a listing of everything that constitutes torture. In fact, our Anti-Torture Act is more comprehensive on the particulars of torture than even the UN Convention Against Torture. And so it's important that we re-emphasize all of these documents, including the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And then, there are associated human rights that were also violated. Charles has talked about the banning of the passenger in question, which gladly now has been rescinded. The reason is that even as a regulatory body, you do not take such decision without fair hearing. Our constitution is very, very clear. And we gave that instances in this advisory, including decided case laws by the Supreme Court of Nigeria, our apex judicial body. So there is the associated rights of freedom, right to fair hearing, but there is also the associated right to freedom of movement. Nigerians have freedom of movement. Then there is also the right to privacy and family life, which has been violated in the case, in our opinion, in the case under review, by not only stripping, the videoing, and the dissemination of that video. Then we also have, of course, a section where the Commission delves into the importance of human dignity. Human dignity is what makes us human beings. It is what makes human rights human rights. The entire corpus of human rights is about dignity of the human person. Whether it's fair hearing, whether it's movement, whether it's family life, whether it is personal liberty, whether it's association, assembly, all of them have a summary, and that summary is the dignity of the human person. And then, of course, the advisory goes on to make policy recommendations. Obligations of the Federal Airports Authority and the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. In addition to all the recommendations we made to them, the National Human Rights Commission offered itself as an NHRI to collaborate with these two governmental bodies in developing passengers' rights awareness campaigns and grievous redress mechanism, okay, at all terminals and for all airline operators in Nigeria. And we hope that we can collaboratively work with the operators and also the regulatory authorities. The Advisory also singled out the Ministry of Aviation. Recently, the minister has really upheld that ministry, but we are now saying, further to what he has done, he should begin an entire process of integrating human rights standards and safeguards into the aviation industry as a whole, not just airline operations, but the entire industry. We need to review their regulatory framework, their policy framework, how they deal with passengers. And we are also, in this advisory, making ourselves and our offices open for collaboration with the ministry, including an interagency collaboration to ensure that the aviation sector aligns with Nigerian obligations under the Convention Against Torture and our Anti-Torture Act. Of course, there are other recommendations on the obligations of the Federal Ministry of Justice, the Nigerian Correctional Service. Then it's important that I emphasize that the Federal Ministry of Justice and the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation is the custodian of the Nigerian Anti-Torture Act. However, under that Anti-Torture Act, Section 5 of the Anti-Torture Act mandates the National Human Rights Commission to support victims of torture to be able to seek redress and justice. And that, as you know, the Commission has been doing right from the 2 SARS panels to all our investigative and enforcement powers. The Commission has been up and doing. Last but not the least, obligations of social media platforms. Social media platforms should not just be a business. They should be platforms that protect the dignity, privacy, and the overall human rights of Nigerians, and must ensure that they maintain standards that would not only protect the dignity and privacy of individuals, whether they belong to their platforms or not, but such videos that were circulated 2 or 3 days ago, everybody that circulated them should have been flagged off by these social media platforms. They should be sanctioned, and the social media platforms should collaborate with our Nigerian law enforcement authorities to bring those people who circulated those videos to accountability. Thank you very much.
Successfully to today's press conference. On behalf of the National Human Rights Commission,